Welcome to an episode of Takoyaki. I can't say that. Takoyaki party. This is a special episode because by the time you hear this, I'm probably frolicking in Japan,
Frolicking.
doing Japan things.
It's also special because it's really early in the morning.
Oh yeah, but we're gonna air this next week. Anyway, this is a special episode because one of my friends was like, "Hey, I want to hear your podcast," and I told him, "I don't know if you want to hear it. I mean, you don't know anything about what we're talking about." And my friend, we used to do some like League of Legends casting. So that's how I have all this equipment and stuff.
Okay.
And so he's like, "Oh, I want to hear you. I bet you have some funny jokes." And so he listens to it, and he's like, "Oh my god, I'm staying far away. I have no idea what you guys are talking about."
Yeah, somebody on my Ask FM, they're like, "Oh, you do a podcast? Well, can I have a link to it?" And I was like, "If you don't know about it by now, you probably don't know about idols, so no."
Yes.
Sorry.
So that's the point of this special episode. We want to be able to tell people what it is, what idols are, what NMB is, assuming they have no prior knowledge. Like they're not former AKB fans. They don't know anything about Japan, except maybe Pearl Harbor.
What the heck? I don't think that's the first thing an American would know about Japan. I would think like sushi would be first.
I don't know, man. When Japan wins something in like the World Cup or not the World Cup, anything internationally, like you look at Twitter, oh my god, dude, it's so racist.
Really?
Yeah, it's like, oh man, like they don't deserve to win because of Pearl Harbor. I'm like,
oh my gosh,
Jesus Christ, man, you're not even alive when that happens.
Yeah, that's stupid.
Anyway, so this is a special episode. I don't know what we're gonna call it. Whatever.
NMB. Oh shoot. NM bibliography. No, what's a word for like something that tells you information?
I don't know.
Internet. Anyway, let's do it.
Okay, so first we're gonna start out by topping. Oh, God, it really is early in the morning. We're gonna start by talking about what a Japanese idol is.
And what is a Japanese idol?
God, that's a good question. I have to look it up on Wikipedia.
I know. A quick trip to Wikipedia tells us that they are heavily promoted young males and females, mostly females actually.
Oh, it started with females, I think.
Yeah, and then male idol groups came into fruition. That's the word, right? Fruition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fruit in it.
Oh, is it fruition or fruition?
No, I mean it's spelled with the word fruit in it, but it's fruition.
Okay, cool. Expanding my vocabulary. Anyway, so they appear all over the media, mostly with singing and dancing on music shows, releasing their own songs. They also do acting. They go on variety shows. I'm sure, I don't know, you probably heard about crazy Japanese variety shows. They're like game shows, but to the next level. We don't really have anything like that here, I don't think. Because I was watching TV when I was in Japan. I'm like, nothing like that exists here.
Wasn't like I don't know. What about like Ellen? Like I never watched Ellen or the Rosie O'Donnell show. Those to me seem pretty similar.
Yeah, but those are more like talk shows. Whereas the variety shows, they'll play like weird games and they'll have a bigger cast of people. Because on a talk show, usually it's the host and then one or two guests. Mm-hmm. But on these variety shows, they'll have whole panels of people from all sorts of different, places in the media. They have the idols, they have actors, comedians, musicians. Like a bunch of people will come together on a variety show, especially a popular one. Mm-hmm. So that's actually I think one of the bigger parts of what idols do. When an idol appears on a variety show, it's kind of a big deal for her and her fans because it's like variety shows are they appeal to the general public, whereas mostly idols are kind of their own niche, I guess. Yeah. It's like they're idol fans. And those are the kind of the people who follow the idol's music and their dancing and those kind of appearances. But variety shows, everybody watches variety shows, so everybody can see the idol at that point.
Yeah. So anyway, so Japanese idols, they started with young girls. They would be like magazine models, sing on TV, do acting, and people would get really attached to these girls because they would try to. There's like a more close relationship, I guess, compared to a normal celebrity.
Right. And that's especially true with more recent idols, like the newer idol groups, I think. Ever since AKB, we'll get into that later, but that's AKB's whole concept. But I think a big appeal of idols is the fact that they're so young. Like most of them are under the age of 20. Mm-hmm. And at first you're like, wait, this is kind of weird. Like why are people so obsessed with these young girls? But it's actually there's a lot of what's the word? I don't want to say like propaganda, but there's a lot of material built up around the fact that like the girls are growing up and going through middle school and high school, and you're there to kind of chronicle their journey with them, and you're watching them grow and become more successful and reach their dreams in the entertainment industry. So I think it's kind of an interesting concept that doesn't really exist here because we had like Miley Cyrus and Selena Gomez and stuff, but those girls are already so heavily, they're like taken care of. Whereas with idols, it's more of a struggle, I guess.
Yeah, I think back then they also used to be more role model ish. So
Oh, that's true, yeah.
like guys would follow them because they like the girl or whatever, but girls would follow them too because they want to be like that idol person. Um,
Yeah.
the other thing is that like people we
With
always say like,
with some of them,
huh? I was gonna say
oh, sorry, go ahead. No.
people we always talk about like how they're pretty young, but the other cool thing is that it's family friendly. Like you'll see like the whole spectrum of people like get into this. So anything
Yeah,
from
it's true. Like there's older women too.
anything from children to I guess the 40 to 50-year-old fans. But it's just
Yeah.
something cool. You go to a concert and you'll just see everybody, You'll see all the demographics. Obviously, it'll be
Hmm.
biased towards some, especially like the 20 to 30 male group that advertisers love in the US.
Yeah.
But
But yeah, it's interesting. It does appeal to a lot of people because they're like I think some you're right, like the younger people look up to them as role models. And then there are like the boys around their age or so that like that, kind of like idolize them in the way like, oh, I have a crush on this girl. But then there are the older people who are like, oh, this girl reminds me of my daughter or my niece, and she's somebody who's working hard, and that's kind of cool to see. But yeah, that's idols. Like the more traditional idol groups were a bit I think they were a lot more reserved, like in the way that the idols acted, they were really like they tried to be perfect. Like they would have them act really perfectly.
mhm.
But now when like you look at some other idol groups, they still like the non-AKB groups, they still kind of do that. Like, the auditions are really intense and they try and pick like the cream of the crop. But I think you get a lot of personality in there too. Like if you read their blogs, from girl to girl, they're all really different. They're not all trying to be like this perfect model or anything.
Yeah.
So
There's
those
also
idols
there's different idol groups. We could start with the male groups. I think the most famous one.
is
Well,
Johnny's, right?
yeah. Well, Johnny's is the company that owns a lot of different groups, and I think their first big hit was SMAP.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know how deeply we're gonna go into SMAP, but
Yeah.
basically they just started appearing in everything. Kimono Takia was this guy in SMAP who was really good at dramas. Like if he started a drama, like the ratings would just shoot through the roof no matter what. And there was also some criticism because he'd always play the same kind of character, like the cool
Oh
guy.
yeah.
I thought he was cool, so I'd watch his dramas.
Pretty cool.
um, the newest big one, I guess, bigger than SMAP probably. SMAP's like because they're older now, so they appeal more to the older generation. So like the new one would be Arashi. I don't know too much about them. I know that one of the guys was in Letters from Iwo Jima.
Oh really?
Nino, I think his name was Nino Mia.
Cool.
So,
Yeah, they're pretty popular right now.
and since we were talking about like having a clean image, people were surprised that that Nino was in this movie because his face is dirty. And
Oh.
like Johnny's really controlling about their image. I don't think they even promote like I was talking about Kibito Takiya and how he's really popular in dramas as an actor. When he
Right.
appears for promotional material, posters and stuff, I don't think they were allowed to use a picture of him. Like everything would be hand drawn or CG'd or something.
Oh wow.
So
That is
they,
really strict.
yeah, so they're really, really protective about their image. They have a large amount of control over their talent.
Yeah. And then there are some other groups, especially some of the girl groups who are a lot more relaxed about that kind of stuff. Because well, we're gonna delve into AKB later, but AKB is just a whole mess of variety. But let's talk about other girl groups right now. Um, well, we have the oldest, well, not the oldest one, but the longest running girl group is Morning Musume. They came about in the 90s, I believe. It was the 90s.
Yeah, I wasn't too big a fan of idol groups back then.
Yeah, I didn't really know about them, but they started in the 90s and they're still going strong. Now they have a new name. They're like Morning Musume 14 because they've kind of obviously they've changed the members since it's been over 20 years, but
Yeah, I think that's when they had the original. I think they called their new members like eggs or something, and then
Yeah, yeah, like the trainees when the girl wanted to join the group, she would join as like a trainee and she would become an egg. That's what they called it. And it's like the egg hatches when it's ready to join the group and it's kind of weird.
oh come
Uh,
on,
it's just a weird term, but
oh, Kenkyusei is kind of weird, but we'll
yeah.
get into that later. And now there's like I think lately there's been an idol explosion. It's not just internet. It's not just national. There's also local idols. Like you'll go to a music event or something locally, and then they'll be there.
Yeah, just like at small music festivals. It's something that can exist on like a really small and local level. Like, oh, we're the idols from this city in this prefecture. And it's just like a group of a few girls and they're just doing their thing and those small local idols don't usually go very far. They kind of just stick to their local festival or music performances. But it's just kind of a cute thing to see. I think I saw a local idol in the middle of a park once, or a couple of them. They were like, it looked like they were practicing for something.
Well,
But
that group might not go very far. Maybe their talent will move on to other groups or do other things.
right, right. Like if you start off as like a local idol, then you might have an easier time getting into a bigger idol group. Like there are like big promotion companies, especially for girls. There's the Hello Project, which is in charge of Morning Musume,
Mhm.
and then there's Stardust, which is in charge of Ebichu, and also Momoclo, right?
Yeah.
Stardust is Momoclo, and Momoclo is Momoira Clover Z. They're the most popular idol group right now when it comes to like idol fans. They have the largest female fan base, and
Oh,
you know,
they do. Oh, I gotta
yeah.
switch right away.
So they're really popular right now. And then the third big one I think is AKS, which manages AKB,
Hmm.
and they're the most popular in terms of sales. All of their singles in the past 3 years have sold over 1 million copies in the first week. And we're gonna get into that because this is about AKB and NMB. So
Yeah.
let's do it.
Yeah. Moving on. It's a great transition there.
Thanks.
We're gonna go into AKB, right? So basically, NMB is a sister group of AKB. AKB was a concept founded by the producer Akimoto Yasushi.
Yeah.
He produced another idol group before called Onyanko Club, and so he had this idea. He said, "I want to build a theater in the city called or a city district called Akihabara, which is it's like the nerdy district of
Yeah,
Tokyo."
it's where you'll find like the maid cafes and the anime people and like there's like that's where the Gundam cafe is.
Yeah,
And that's where a lot of idols are. So
yeah,
it's kind of like the nerd otaku weeaboo, not weeaboo, but nerdy otaku district.
yeah.
But it's also like Electric Town. That's where they sell a lot of electric appliances. So it attracts a large variety of people.
Yeah, so there's like games, anime, idols, I guess, maid
Yeah.
cafes.
So this was the perfect place to build an AKB theater. And when we say theater, we mean like a small kind of I don't know what's the right word for it. It's smaller than like a high school gym. It's just it's like
Like
it was
it's like a high school theater.
Yeah, yeah, it's sort of like a high school theater, but it doesn't hold as many because the high school theater in my area, my school didn't have one, but the one that we would use at the other school, it would hold like, I don't know, 400, 500 people. This theater only holds 250 people. It's very small. It's the eighth floor of a department building, but the department building is pretty narrow, so they didn't really have much room to make an elaborate theater. So it's a really simple stage. It's kind of just like an elevated platform. It's up about a foot and a half, I'd say. And then you have 250 seats, and that's it. And the seats almost look more like benches if you look at them. They're not really like, theater chairs that you'd see in the movie theater. So it's very simplistic, and that's how it was back in 2006, and they really haven't changed anything since.
Well, they have, but
Well, I mean, they changed the group, but like when it comes
about
to
the
the way
theater, yeah, yeah,
the way the theater looks, it's pretty
yeah.
much
So,
the same.
so this is the concept that they had. And they drafted a bunch of members. They call them generations. So the first generation would be the first set of members that they drafted.
Well, don't use draft because draft is like another thing.
Okay, well,
Yeah, it gets really
recruited.
confusing. Recruited auditions. They held auditions,
Yeah,
and they brought in members for the group.
yeah,
And the first members that joined were the first generation, and then a few months later they had another audition, and the members who passed that were the second generation, and so on and so forth. And now they're at 15 generations, so they've had 15 auditions,
And
and that's a lot.
keep in mind that when they send out the auditions, it would be the equivalent of putting a piece of paper on a telephone pole.
Yeah, pretty much. The first audition was really simple looking because they didn't have a website or anything. I mean, this was like 2005. People were bad with the internet anyway. But yeah, they had flyers all over Akihabara and like in newspapers and stuff. So if you listen to like the interviews with the older members, they're like, "Oh yeah, I heard about it because my mom was reading the newspaper and there was like this little corner that said now accepting auditions for a new idol group." And so she said, "Let's do it." And I was like, "Okay, mom." That's how one of the girls joined. I'm like, wow, that's pretty much just luck to find out it existed.
I mean, the one of the important things, of course, is Akimoto Yasushi, or abbreviated as Aki-P. Again, he produced Anya Uncle Club, which was a pretty popular idol group. So that was their
Right.
what is it? That was their claim to fame. So it's not
Yeah.
like it's not
He already had a
exactly
reputation.
yeah, it's not exactly like, oh, there's like a flyer on the street and that's all. Like
That's true. Yeah, because they saw his name, like, oh, it's by that Akimoto guy. Like he's done this before. He knows what he's doing, kind of thing.
Mhm.
And he's also well, as long as we're talking about him, we should also mention that he's the lyricist. He writes all of the songs, and he's like a really established lyricist. He's written far over 1,000 songs in his lifetime, and he's written for some pretty famous singers. Especially like there's an enka singer that he's written for that was pretty famous. Anyway, so he's pretty established in the industry. So being managed by him was kind of a good sign for a lot of people.
So he produced this group. They weren't very famous when they started out. I think they said there were 7 people when they first did their show,
Yeah, their very first show had 7 guests come to see them.
and they could be called the Kami Seven, but
Yeah.
which means God. Kami is God. God Seven, whatever.
Yeah, that might have been the origin of the term, but we'll get into that later too. So
Um,
anyway, so in the theater performances are nightly, or they were nightly at least. Now they kind of sometimes take days off, but every night the girls will perform. And since there are so many members, they've divided AKB up into different teams, so a team can perform instead of just a random group of members. Like, oh, you guys come perform today. Now it'll be like Team A, come perform today. So let's talk about teams.
okay.
Yeah, so I kind of already mentioned like that they exist. There are 4 teams in AKB, and now there's a fifth one, but it's kind of not really associated. The teams are A, K, B, and 4, so very straightforward. And then the fifth team is Team 8, so it would be AKB48. But Team 8 doesn't really do as much with the rest of AKB. They're kind of a promotional thing that they're doing with Toyota right now. So we're not really sure what's going to happen to Team 8, but the other 4 teams are solid and they perform in the theater nightly and they rotate around. Like it'll be Team K's turn and then it'll be Team 4's turn and etc. etc.
Yeah, and the way they were formed, of course, would be, the first like when we said that they audition certain generations, and then when they get good enough, they get promoted to a certain team, whatever team that management feels is appropriate for them.
Right.
So you can have one team that will have like a lot of first gens, one team that'll have second and third and first and stuff like that. Um, what else?
Yeah. So let's see. Well, as long as we're talking about it, once they filled up the first teams, because Team 4 didn't exist originally, that's kind of a newer thing. But once they filled up Team A with the first generation of people who passed the audition, and then Team K, which was the second generation of people who passed the audition, and then there was Team B, which was the third generation. But after that, they had full teams, but they were still taking auditions and still doing new generations. So everybody after the third generation, they joined the group as trainees, or kenkyusei is what they call it, which means research student, right?
Yeah. So if you
Yeah.
if you graduate from college and then you go back to school, you'd be Kenkyuin or Kenkyusei.
Okay. So anyway, yeah. So when the girl joins the group, she can't become a full member right away because the teams are full. The team limit was originally set at 16, and no more than 16 on a team. Now it's kind of changed a bit. But anyway, so instead of becoming promoted to a full team member, she would spend a period of time performing as an understudy. That was the kenkyusei's role. So they would kind of learn the ropes by filling in for when one of the team members couldn't be there. They would train backstage with them. And then once management decided they were ready, they would be promoted to the team. Of course, an opening would have to appear. Like if a girl wanted to leave the group and now Team A only has 15 members instead of 16, they'll pick the best Kenkyusei to go take her spot. And now that Kenkyusei is permanently in Team A. So that's how it goes. But some girls never get promoted to a team and they just end up leaving the group. And that's always kind of sad because the Kenkyusei always seem to have a lot of potential. But that's Kenkyusei. And that term comes up a lot. So
And
yeah.
since you mentioned it, we said that there are 16 There used to be 16 per team, and now there's a lot per team. I guess I don't even know
Yeah.
how much.
Some teams have like 23 or 24, I
And
think.
yeah,
23.
and the
Yeah,
question
most
that always comes to me is why are there so many people?
Yeah, and that's an interesting question. But I think a lot of AKB's appeal is the fact that there are so many people because the way that it's been set up, it's like you can't hate AKB unless you hate girls because there is a girl with every personality type of all sorts of ages, all sorts of colors of life. You know, there's so much variety in the group that that if you like watch them for a while, you'll find somebody that you like. You'll be like, "Oh, this girl reminds me of my sister," or "Oh, this girl reminds me of myself because she's really lazy and I'm really lazy too, but she's also really funny." And then you can find all sorts of different types of members. And I think that's why they've brought in so many because they realize there's so much appeal with the more you have.
Well, to me, the big question I get is like, do they all go on and perform at once?
Oh, yeah.
And the answer is no.
The answer is no.
First of all, in the theater, they perform according to whatever teams are in and stuff like that. So the structure of a theater show is basically they have team songs where they all sing at once, and then they usually get broken up by MCs or like talk sessions while everybody changes their clothes. They have unit songs where they take just a number of girls, not the whole
Usually,
team.
yeah, usually three or four girls from the team will perform one unit song.
Yeah, or there could be a solo unit, or there could be six or seven. You know, it depends on
Right.
whatever stage that they're running. Stage is the term that they use to describe their set list.
Right. So there's usually 16 songs performed during a theater show. Yeah, it's usually about 16. And so some of those songs are big group songs, like you said, and then some of those songs are unit songs, which are smaller, smaller groups perform those. And the unit songs are usually the most iconic. A lot of the stages are named after their unit songs or identified by their unit songs because that's usually the most interesting too. It's a lot easier to follow what three girls are doing than what 16 girls are doing on
Right.
stage at one time. So yeah, when we say different stages, we mean sometimes they change the songs. So they'll write new songs and so instead of performing the old 16 songs, now they're going to do the new ones. And then maybe a couple years from now, they'll get another 16 songs to perform, so they'll switch over to that 16. We haven't so when that happens, it's called getting a new stage. And sadly, we haven't gotten a new stage for a while. But fingers crossed, because new stages are fun. It's exciting to see a new group of songs, and it kind of gives the team an identity. Like, oh, these are our songs. We're the original ones performing them, because team songs aren't supposed to be performed by anybody outside the team. At least that's how it used to be.
Yeah.
Things change. Things change.
Okay. So aside from doing these theater shows, they also release singles or and albums and stuff. So they have some presence in the music industry.
Yeah, they do. I think they have a really solid presence
Um,
because of how well they sell.
they also have their own concerts. Um, the big thing I think there's two big things that I think that separated AKB from other idol groups. The first thing would be handshake events. So
Handshake.
when you bought a single, it would come with a ticket that lets you shake their hand and say a few words to them for a few
Yeah.
seconds. So that was kind of new. The concept of AKB was idols you can meet. That was the huge one for them.
Right. And that's why they sell over 1 million copies in the first week that their single goes on sale because people are buying the single so they could go meet the members.
Yeah. There's two.
That's why they're so successful.
There's two kinds of handshakes. One is if you get the regular version. It's called a national handshake, where basically there's just like a row of tables and you just walk by and you shake everybody's hand. You don't really have time to say anything. The other one, of course, is they call it kobetsu, which is like a separate handshake. So you when you buy your single, you have to apply for a slot to shake somebody's hand. You get a little more time and you get to say a few more words with them.
Yeah, so you go online and you select which member you want to meet instead of with the national one where you just kind of go and you meet pretty much everybody you can with the national one.
Yeah.
But with the Kobetsu one, you have to say beforehand online, I want to meet this member at this time, if she's available, of course. And so it's kind of like a lottery for the popular members. You might not get the ticket, but usually you will. And then after the applications are over for handshake events, then they'll charge you. If you bought like 6 tickets to meet somebody, they'll charge you for 6 CDs and they'll ship them to you. So that's kind of nice how it's organized like that. So you don't have to go out to the store in a panic to buy it and then find the code or something and then go online to see if you can get the handshake on time. It's all kind of done beforehand, so
Yeah. Well, I mean,
that's
they need to
nice.
organize their events too.
Yeah, of
Um,
course.
the second big event that AKB is known for, major event, is the election. So we talked about the handshake events. There would be certain like a single that's usually released like around May or
Yeah, April, May.
April, May.
Yeah, usually May.
Yeah, and this CD would have a ticket where you can vote for your favorite girl, and then they would have an election where whoever got the most votes would be their position in the song would be determined by whoever got the most votes. So people want to make their girl number one, or they want her to appear in the single or whatever because there's only 16. And
Right. Oh, we should talk about that. How about Senbatsu? Because you're right. Like the Sosenkyo, the election, it's like a giant popularity contest. So the prize is being, in the music video for the next single, and that's what the top 16 girls get. But then the next 16 girls, ranks 16 to 32, they get a different song, and so on and so on.
17 to 32.
Yeah, sorry, 17 to 32. Number 16 gets to be in the music video too. But yeah, so the top 16 are called Senbatsu, and that term's been around since AKB was first formed because like we said, AKB has too many members to all appear at once. So when they release a single, there's too many members to all put on the single. So they would pick certain girls. Originally they would pick 16, and those 16 girls would be the ones who sing the title track on the single, and they would be in the music video for that song. So that's kind of it was kind of always a big deal to be in Senbatsu because that means, you're one of the top of the group and it means you're one of the most known to the public, I guess is the
Yeah,
way to say it.
and you'd promote for yourself and all that stuff.
Yeah, if you're not in Senbatsu, it's not like there's no hope. There are girls who have not been Senbatsu and then have been promoted up to Senbatsu later. There are girls who have been originally in Senbatsu and have fallen from it. So Senbatsu is always, or usually always changing, but there are established members who have been in Senbatsu for almost their whole careers. So those ones are pretty solid. But they always like to throw in surprises here and there.
Yeah, we say senbatsu. Senbatsu really means nothing more than selection.
Yeah, that's what the term means.
But when we refer to senbatsu, we are usually referring to who was selected to appear in the single. One thing you didn't mention is that they also, when they perform on music shows, they tend to use senbatsu. So they actually, that's when they get some national exposure. They'll be watching some music show and be like, hey, there's that girl that I like or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Because earlier I mentioned how when idols go on variety shows, it's a big deal. But it's also a big deal when they're on music shows because music shows are also nationally broadcast. It's just like something you turn on the TV and there's a music show going on and there's groups performing songs. So if you're one of the, if you're an AKB Senbatsu and you're performing an AKB song on a music show, people are like, oh, wow, these are the AKB girls. And it's kind of a big deal. So yeah,
Okay, so
that's it. That's AKB.
yeah, there's some other terms that go around the community, I guess, or the fan community. For example, Oshimen would be like your favorite
Oh,
member.
yeah.
So if you say, "Oh, this girl's my Oshimen, she's my favorite member," and that's usually the question you get when you talk to other fans or even people who aren't fans. It'd be like, "Oh, I like AKB." It's like, "Oh, well, who's your Oshimen?"
Yeah, a funny story. When I went to the handshake event, I was signing for Natsu, like Akashi Natsuko. I was signing her birthday card. Like her birthday committee was there. And the girl standing there was like, "Oh, who's your Oshi?" And I panicked. I'm like, Natsu." She's like, "Whoa, really?" I'm like, "Yeah." Like I couldn't think of anything. But I do like Natsu, so it's okay. But yeah, some people take it really seriously. Like you have your Oshi men, and then if it's someone who's really important to you and it's like they're your number one, then you call them your Kami Oshi, would be like God Oshi, like this is the one kind of thing.
Yeah,
And Oshi means like support, right? Or kind of like push,
like
and in like a supportive way.
yeah, kind of. So, um,
And then there are also Hako Oshi, and Hako Oshi means you like everybody in the group and you support the whole group. So there's another AKB sister group called SKE, and a lot of their fans are called Hako Oshi because they're really into SKE pride, and SKE needs to succeed as a group. We don't really, it's not as much about the individual as the group, and that doesn't exist in every idol group, but it's very common in SKE especially. So if you ever follow them, be prepared for Hako Oshi.
um, there's also the fans are known as wota, which is basically otaku's like an anime guy that's really into anime or something, right?
Right.
Wota actually came because they changed the spelling for otaku.
Oh,
So they used like there's a word called or a syllable that's wo or o, and it's like the direct object particle in the
right.
language, and so they just changed that. So that's why they're called wota.
Oh, cool. So Wota is like the idol version of otaku.
Yeah,
Okay.
and so they're what you would expect, I guess.
Yeah,
Usually,
they're like otaku, but instead of being obsessed with anime girls, they're obsessed with regular girls.
well, not even just anime. It doesn't have to be anime
Yeah.
girls, but
Yeah, but some of like the hardcore otaku, it's like, get it together, bro.
yeah. So there's this thing called wotage where like when a song comes on, they all dance a certain way, a certain style. For whatever reason, it started to spread. There's
Oh,
there's chants during the song because I guess the songs are composed really similarly. I think.
yeah,
As
there's usually like an intro instrumental, I guess. And during that introduction, that the first instrumental of the song usually is when the calls will start, like whoa, whoa,
yeah.
whoa, kind of, and then they'll start saying all these words. There's like this long string of words that they'll say during the especially long instrumentals, and it sounds really cool when you hear them chant it, but they're actually chanting English words that have no meaning at all. They say like fiber, cyber, fiber, driver, and they say all of them like one after the other, and it sounds really cool, but they're just saying words that end with er. So,
Well, I mean, there's actually three parts to that. I think there's three.
yeah, there's
Right.
like a full thing.
But you don't have to get. It's just that when you watch it, just know
Be prepared.
that they're chanting this stuff. Like personally, I don't really care about it. I think it sounds really dumb.
Yeah.
But it's just like behavior that I guess is around idols that they tend to
Yeah.
chant these things.
It's like crowd hype.
Yeah,
And also like when there's like a small break after, because after a line in the song, usually there's like a small pause, or oftentimes, and that small pause the Woda will use as a chance to say the member's name. So if Yuko, say let's talk about Yuko. So if the member named Yuko has a solo line, she'll sing her solo, and after that brief pause after her line, the whole entire crowd will go Yuko or something. And
yeah,
so then and so you'll just hear the stadium or the arena erupt with like this Yuko call, and it's really cool. And a lot of the girls they'll mention in their blogs like, "Oh, I was really moved when I heard everybody call my name, and it was really nice to hear that." And they'll be like, "Thank you, fans." That especially happens at theater shows when it's like the girl's birthday. Everybody at the theater show will chant her name at every opportunity they can just to show support. So it's kind of a nice little gesture.
okay. So that's
That-
AKB,
yeah, sorry.
and
That's AKB is very complicated.
and to I guess to expand on AKB, right? They wanted to have presence in other cities across Japan because AKB is in Akihabara, which is in Tokyo. Tokyo is obviously the biggest city in Japan. It's kind of hard to quantify how big Tokyo is. I mean, it's the population of California, and you can get. I mean, look at the size of California versus the size of Tokyo. You know, it's pretty dense.
Seriously.
But they wanted to establish more presence in other cities. We talked about SKE, so they're like the AKB group or the sister group that they established in a city called Nagoya. I think that's also the base of like a lot of auto companies. I think
Yeah, that's where Toyota is.
yeah.
Nagoya's like it's the third most populated city in Japan. So it was a pretty good spot.
There's also two other groups. The one we talk about is NMB, which stands for Namba, which is in Osaka. Osaka is also a pretty big area.
It's the second most populated, I think.
Yeah, in that area is also Kyoto, so it is. It's another populated area. The last group is Hakata HKT48. They're in Fukuoka, which is the west side, which isn't as populated, I guess.
No, but there are Hakata and Fukuoka. There it's known to be somewhere where a lot of idols are produced. It's kind of like it's kind of like the idol capital, I guess you could say. Not I mean not really because Akihabara is the idol capital, but it has a reputation for being somewhere that a lot of local idols come from.
And also, we say that even though these groups are based in these respective cities, they could also come from anywhere. So, there will be people from the Fukuoka region that actually go to Tokyo to audition for that group instead of auditioning for the Fukuoka group.
Right. So it
But
doesn't matter where you're from, kind
yeah,
of.
but the thing is that they wanted to establish theaters in each respective region. So
So So we're talking about NMB. So NMB has a theater much like the AKB one. It's small. It only holds about 300 people. And the NMB teams perform in it nightly and they rotate who performs when.
Hmm.
So it's NMB is very similar to AKB in its structure. They also have three teams. There's Team N, Team M, and Team B2 because AKB already took Team B. So you can't have two Team B. So this is B2.
Yeah, so pretty much everything we talked about practically is also established in NMB. So the teams, the theater, handshake events. What else is there?
And NMB members don't have their own election, Sosenkyo election, but they do participate in AKBs. So the AKB Sosenkyo is pretty much every group Sosenkyo.
Yeah,
So SKE, HKT, and NMB all participate.
yeah.
So yeah, so it's very similar to AKB in its structure, but I think it's the member dynamic, like the feel, I guess, of the group is different in a way. But it might be because the group is younger. NMB was established it started in 2010, whereas AKB was back in 2005. So NMB has had less time to form itself, I guess. But I think they've already really gotten a group flavor going, if you will.
Yeah. So one of the major differences, this is something I'm not too familiar with, but they all have talent management agencies. AKB, I think each of the members was assigned to, or they weren't assigned, they were like certain talent management agencies picked up each member. So even though the overall group is produced by AKS, the members might belong to different talent management agency. And so the unique thing about NMB is that they all belong to a talent management agency called Yoshimoto, which is a very big. It's a big group. They have a lot of power, and they're also known for doing a lot of comedy.
Yeah, so Yoshimoto is really established as this it's like a comedy production company, but then they picked up NMB, and I think that was probably surprising to a lot of people
Hmm.
because it doesn't really seem like a Yoshimoto-ish thing to do, does it? Because I mean they have like a whole comedy theater, yeah. But Yoshimoto has done a really good job with AKB, and some would say, like I would say, that Yoshimoto has done a better job at managing NMB than AKS has done with
Well,
AKB.
we won't get too much into that. I just wanted to mention
Right.
that Yoshimoto, does this stuff.
Right, I know, but it's the management is always really important in what the group can and can't do, and Yoshimoto's management of NMB, I think, has allowed them to do things that AKB wouldn't.
Yeah. Again, we mentioned the comedy angle. One of the differences between AKB and NMB is that, I mean, yeah, the structure is the same, but what kind of work they do, what kind of direction they're given, how they differ themselves from the group, or how they differ themselves from AKB. That's all important. That's why. That's why I follow them. So you'll see them appear on comedy shows. They do a lot of local stuff, local talk shows. They're told to be funnier than. They're told to be more comedic than AKB. So, for example, AKB might appear on a show, and then you'll see a girl act really cute. Whereas if it's an NMB member, they might be telling jokes and stuff.
Yeah.
And that's actually a directive from the top, from Yoshimoto. They say, "Hey, I want you to be this kind of character, or I want you to work on this because that's what you need to do." There also one of the things is that generally there's a big difference between Tokyo and Osaka.
Yeah.
Tokyo is usually the east and Osaka is the west, even though their city is far more west than Osaka. There's a difference in language. There's a difference in style. You'll hear lots of jokes. It's like, oh, Tokyo people do it this way. Osaka people do it this way. For example, where they stand on the escalator, what kind of foods they eat. Dialect is different.
Yeah. Would you say it's more like or not more like, but kind of like the East Coast versus West Coast in the United States?
Yeah,
Like New York versus LA?
it is, but it's also a lot deeper because there's also some history behind it. I think.
Yeah.
Like, there's not. I mean, there's history, East Coast, West Coast, U.S., but it's not like, the capital was in New York. It's now in California. Like, there's nothing like
That's
that.
true. Yeah, because in Japan the capital was originally in the east. Or I'm sorry, not in the east, in the west, in the Osaka area. It was in Kyoto. And then it moved to Tokyo, so there's kind of that shift. And now it's like west versus east. But I don't know. It's interesting to see this sort of dynamic come up because there are NMB members who will reference this like Tokyo versus Osaka thing, and they'll be like, "Oh, we won't lose to Tokyo," kind of feeling.
Yeah.
So
The
so
the
it's fun. They
the
get competitive.
the
Sorry, sorry.
rivalry. Yeah, the rivalry is present almost anywhere. You'll see it a lot in baseball, but you'll also see it here, like in NMB, AKB. Um, did we go over Namba? Like they call it NMB because Namba is a section of Osaka.
Yeah.
There's basically two major sections. Obviously, there's all these other sections of the city, but Namba would be the south of Osaka. Umeda is the north. Umeda is more like where they put all the businesses and stuff, so it's more like
Classy,
yeah,
I guess,
yeah,
or more businessy.
like you go there to work. Whereas if you when you go to Namba, like you go there to like hang out, go to bars. Um, I don't know. I really don't know how to describe it.
It's for fun, I guess.
Yeah, Namba's more nightlifey.
Yeah, so
Umeda's more daylifey.
yeah. So when it comes to NMB, NMB also has at least back in 2012 when I first started following NMB, they seem to be going for this more like risque image. Like they'd be like, oh, we're like the sexier group and we'll wear like shorter outfits or something, and that's kind of gone away. But I thought it was interesting that they did that at one point because it was kind of like it kind of reminded me like, oh, maybe like Namba nightlife versus Akihabara, which is more just like classic idly. So that's that.
Oh, that is also Osaka. Like Osaka in general, just tends to be more outspoken, more
Hmm.
loud. Yeah, more loud compared to Tokyo. So
It's totally East Coast West Coast because people are like, oh, Californians are so like loud and like they're just like, and then we say, oh, people from the East Coast are so uptight. So it's totally like it.
well, I think we're laid back and they're uptight. I don't think we're
Yeah.
loud. I think they're loud, but
Really?
I don't know. I
I think we're loud.
we'll have to ask our friends when they come back from that Momusume.
Yeah. What are New Yorkers like?
Yeah. Um, but that's like the general gist. So NMB is actually pretty similar to AKB, but it's the differences that we appreciate.
Hmm.
And of course, they're not completely separate from AKB. In the recently they introduced a program called Kenin or transfer student. So basically, they'll swap. They won't swap members, but they'll have members in both groups performing like as part of different teams. So there'll be somebody
Yes.
from the AKB team performing with an NMB team at their theater and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's like a concurrency.
One of the more controversial things is that for the Senbatsu for AKB, the people who appear on the single, they'll take members from these different sister groups from SKE, NMB, and HKT because it's the big single. When AKB has a handshake event, all the girls from every group will be at this handshake event.
Yeah, it's not just AKB anymore. So
Yeah,
AKB's kind of turned into like a mothership. They're not just like, I mean, obviously it's still its own group and there are still members who are just AKB members, but it's in recent years it seemed like members of SKE, NMB, and HKT are also kind of like unofficially AKB members too. So they get called into doing AKB concerts and handshake events and appearing in AKB songs. And that's caused controversy and that's kind of I
yes,
don't know. It's caused tension, I think, between fans because there are some fans who want to keep it separate.
yeah. Some people want AKB to be pure AKB. What else is there? I said all the girls from every sister group appears at the AKB handshake events. All these sister groups also come out with their own single, and they all have their own individual handshake events. So
Right. So it's like the NMB members are doing double time because they're doing their own handshake events for their own songs, and then the AKB ones, right?
yeah, sometimes NMB appears on AKB shows and vice versa. Um, they have a close relationship with their, so they're not exactly the same, but they're not also exactly different.
Hmm.
Is what we're trying to drive at. That's
Yeah.
why we brought up AKB to begin with because they share a lot of different. They do a lot of the same things.
Yeah. It's kind of hard to talk about NMB without talking about AKB just because of how tied together the groups are.
Yeah.
So
So that leads us to us.
that's us.
We're an NMB podcast.
Yeah, so we're talking about NMB, and we're pretty much focused on their differences. Like this is how NMB is distinguished. This is what their members are up to. That's unique and fun and interesting, and it's why you should like NMB.
If we're gonna go into our show, or basically the point of our show, I guess. First, we start off with news, and it might seem really weird that we have news every week regarding this group, but I think because you're more personally invested in each of the members or in
Hmm.
certain members that there's just a lot of content to go through. If you were to follow What's a celebrity?
Justin Bieber.
I don't like him. If you were to, well, I don't like Kanye West either. I was gonna use him, but generally, like news with them. First of all, they're only one person, and second of all, there usually isn't a lot of day to day, week to week news that they have.
Oh yeah, so I guess Justin Bieber's a bad example because that kid's always getting into trouble.
But even then, it's not like, oh, this time, Justin Bieber signed the contract with Coke or something. It's just like,
Yeah, that's true because we'll get NMB news like, oh, now these two NMB members have gotten a chance to appear in this commercial.
yeah,
And this other NMB member is going to appear in a radio program in this area. This other NMB member is going to be on a TV show. So
or they performed at this concert here. Like, what happened?
right.
So there's the reason why we can do weekly news is because there's so many members, and because the little successes are actually big deals for them.
Right, especially for the non-Senbatsu members, for the members who aren't in the top 16. I think the little successes kind of make all the difference, especially for us fans.
We also do TV show recaps. We talked about TV shows, how they appear on TV shows. Sometimes they're produced by the group. Sometimes they just appear on other people's TV shows. And there's a lot of TV. And it's also really niche, right? So like these TV shows will broadcast at like 3 a.m. in Japan, but since we're overseas, we have our own special ways to watch them, right?
Right.
And it is a lot of content, so sometimes we summarize this content for people who don't have the time to watch it, or they want to know which content they should watch, which is good. Or sometimes these things will pop up, not just TV shows, but in their appearances, we'll have an inside joke that carries on. And I think that it's all these small inside jokes that make, I guess, idol groups in general pretty unique. And it's kind of cool to be part of the inside joke.
Yeah, it is. It's like the longer you follow them, the longer you get what they're talking about. And you're like, oh, that's totally something she would say, or that's the kind of relationship these two members have with each other. So it's kind of a funny shout out or something like that.
Yeah.
So it's good. It's fun.
That's what our news is for.
Yeah, it's good fun.
We also have a member of the week because there's so many members.
That's true. With it, and NMB, there are over 60 members,
Yeah.
so we have lots to talk about.
I think there's 64.
I thought it was 63. Crap. Anyway, it's always in flux because
Yeah.
members come and go.
Yeah. There are a lot of members. There are members that don't get a lot of exposure. I mean, we didn't talk about any of the members from NMB yet. For example, the two big ones are Yamamoto Sayaka and Watanabe Miyuki. And each member has their own nickname too, so that makes it complicated. When we refer to girls on our program, we usually use whatever name they have, but it can also be really confusing, like, because we'll say, the other day, Nishizawa Rurina did, dress up as a dude. And people be like, I don't even know who that is.
Yeah. Like sometimes it doesn't matter if you use their nickname or their full name. If they're an unpopular member, then they probably won't be recognized. But that's kind of what we want to do. We want to make these unpopular members, we want to at least educate people. Like, oh, there are these girls in the group that aren't Sayaka and Miyuki, and they can do cool stuff too.
Yeah.
Although I love Sayaka and Miyuki, so don't get me wrong.
Yeah. Well, I mean, since the international community is really small, there are a number of fans who also don't have good Japanese. It's kind of, since the content that gets translated, subbed, and ported to like the international community tends to be the more popular members. Like, it's nice to give like the non-popular members some way to shine. So that's why we have member of the week. It tends to be non-popular members. Like, we'll cover popular members every once in a while, but we usually do that because there's so many people, there's so many girls, and some people don't get as much coverage internationally as we would like, I guess.
Yeah.
So that leads us to our last topic, which is the community. We're here because we wanted to inform everybody about what's going on. Our community is actually really small. When I look at it, we probably have like, I don't know,
20?
100 at most.
Oh, yeah,
150?
most. Like if we're counting casual fans too.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
if we count,
It's
like, it's pretty small. Like,
Yeah, and this isn't just like American fans. This is like all of the international fans.
like almost all my Twitter friends, NMB friends, are like in another time zone because they keep updating when I'm sleeping.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting how they can sell 500,000 copies in Japan, but they only have 150 fans outside of Japan. So
Yeah,
that's kind of a interesting thing.
and it's really small. One thing I really want to stress is that because it's so small, there's a lot of we need to like band together, I guess, right? Because if we're
Yeah, or at least we need to talk to each other.
yeah, if we're all separate, then like one, it's not as fun, and like and two, like we can't grow our community and stuff. So that's why I wanted to establish this show. If you look at stuff like news, like the inside jokes, right? That's jokes that we could tell amongst ourselves. Um, we want to cover members that maybe a casual fan or somebody they didn't know about a certain member and now they want to know about a member, and then look, there's actually another fan of that member, so
Yeah.
then you guys can talk, and then now basically we don't want to leave any room to, or we want to say like, hey, at least all the stuff that you need to know about NMB is here. Like we don't want to say like, we don't want people to say like, oh, I wish I knew more about this girl, but she's not popular, so I'm done. It's like, I don't want
Yeah,
that.
that happened to me. It was painful. There's this NMB girl that I really liked, and back in 2012 when I first got into them, there was like no fan base, and there was especially no fan base for her. So it was kind of like me, and I was the entire fan base, and eventually I lost interest because it's not very fun. But now she's gotten a lot more attention, and the NMB community has grown. So it's a lot more fun, and I can go and read her thread on a forum, and there are people talking about her, and it's really exciting because at first it was just me.
Who is it?
So it was Tako no Yui.
Oh, okay.
Nobody liked Yui. And I'm like, why? She's wonderful. And now a lot of people recognize her.
Yeah.
So,
So that's the overall plan for our show. We talked about our show, we talked about NMB, we talked about its base, which is AKB, and we talked about Japanese idols.
so that's the entire hierarchy of how NMB has come to form. Come to fruition. That word.
Fruition.
Fruition.
So,
That's us.
hopefully you enjoyed this introduction to our show, to NMB, AKB idols. Maybe next time you hear our show, you'll be like, oh, okay, now I know what they're talking about.
Yeah, so give us a chance.
Like I don't know if you guys that are listening have friends that were kind of skeptical.
I don't know if you have friends.
Damn, that wasn't mean. I was saying I don't know if you have friends that like are kind of skeptical about NMB, or friends who don't know, who are interested but don't really know how to get into it. Yeah, I guess you could show them this episode. You know what?
Yeah.
I don't even think we said our names in the beginning.
Oh, shoot. Yeah, sorry.
That's fine.
We just assume you know who we are right now, but I'm DJ Soy Milk.
Yeah, I'm Osaka Joe. That's kind of really late. It's 53.
Really
minutes.
late in the
50
game. We didn't even say that we're Takoyaki Party.
Oh, we
We're just
did.
like-
We did. We were having trouble.
we
I remember
did?
I was like, that's Takoyaki.
Oh yeah, Takoyaki. Yeah.
So-
It's funny that kid whoever asked me on my Ask FM like, "Oh, do you do a podcast?" And like my previous answer, I had said, "Oh yeah, Joe and I were recording Takoyaki Party." It's like, why didn't you just read that? You could find out what the podcast is like in the next question. So whatever, it's no secret that we are the Takoyaki Party hosts.
Okay, that'll wrap up this special episode. Again, hopefully you learned something, or you have friends to tell about, I guess, or
Yeah,
people.
make everybody love NMB.
I don't want to do that. I just want to make sure that they have all the material if they do want to.
Yes,
I ain't gonna force people on things.
I will. Saya Milky.
You disgust me. Okay, once again, I'm Osaka Joe,
I'm DJ Soy Milk.
and that'll conclude our show. Goodbye.
And bye-bye. I'm gonna go back to sleep.